My name is Catiana Foster. I am a postgrad fellow at Tuskegee University, and I will be presenting on Snow Hill Normal and Industrial Institution. I have titled it "Unraveling the Enigma: Exploring the Legacy and Impact of Snow Hill Normal and Industrial Institute." Snow Hill Normal and Industrial Institute was a historical Black educational institute located in Snow Hill, Alabama. It was founded in 1893 by William James Edwards, a former Tuskegee Institute student and teacher. The school emphasized on a practical education with a peculiar emphasis on agriculture and manual labor, in addition to traditional traditional subjects for African American students in the county. Despite facing challenges such as funding and segregation policies, Snow Hill Normal and Industrial Institute continued to provide education and job training for African American students until it closed in 1973. Today, it is remembered as an important institution in the history of African American education, particularly in the rural South. William James Edwards, originally known as Ulysses Grant Edwards, was born at Snow Hill, Alabama, on September 17, 1869, 3/4 of a mile east of where Snow Hill Institute now stands. Growing up, Edwards describes how he was raised by his grandparents on a sharecropping farm after his mother passed away and his father went away to work. We had about 3 acres of ground covered around our cabin, and my grandmother and I farmed. I did not know how old I was when I began working, for I had been a farm hand ever since I could remember anything. We usually made 1 barrel of cotton each year and about 25 or 30 barrels of corn. Sometimes my grandfather would do our plowing, or at other times, as we had no livestock, my grandmother and I worked out for others to get our plowing done. Edward was sent to school during the winter months when he became old enough. Due to lack of resources such as clothes and food, the other children would make fun of Edward. This affected his mood about school, but he credited his motivation towards a desire to learn to read the Bible for his old grandmother, who, like his mother, was very, very religious. At times, he would read the Bible to her when he gained a better understanding of the words. By August of 1887, the topic of Tuskegee Institute was introduced to Edward by a presiding elder during a sermon meeting. By the end of the meeting, Edward was determined to attend the institute the following year. With money and some resources saved up, Edward reached Tuskegee Institute by January of 1889. Although the environment was difficult and challenges did occur during his educational pursuits at Tuskegee, Edward was determined to be successful. Had it not been for my aunt's encouraging words and efforts, I believe that I could not have overcome the efforts of others to keep me going. On May 17, 1893, Edwards graduated with 20 other individuals. The graduating class motto, "Deeds, not words," rung true for Edward as he continued his education pursuits. His first course of action was rebuilding his family's home, and other farms within the area of Snow Hill. And then he focused his time and effort in continuing the rebuilding of farms in the Black Belt area of Alabama. Snow Hill Norm and Industrial Institute. As Edward traveled through the Black Belt area of Alabama, he began to survey the region and to understand the educational needs of the Black community. Edward wanted a concept of a school correcting the flawed ideas residents had about education, teaching skills, and achieving an education that was practical and not theoretical for the community and surrounding area. One of his biggest challenges was that Black parents who spent all of their lives at hard labor, were hostile to their children's education. Families worked year-round on the farm, and parents couldn't see the purpose of having the children work in the school. But Edwards insisted on keeping the industrial side of his school. After a meeting with planter R.O. Sampson, a family friend, to discuss the welfare of the colored community, Edwards used the opportunity to persuade Sampson to spare a few acres of land. In 1893, Snow Hill Normal and Industrial Institute was created on 7 acres of land. The structure was an old, neglected one-room log cabin with 1 teacher and 3 students. Agriculture was viewed as the forefront and basic industry of the institution. And then these are a few photos of what the school looked like. So at the top on the left, we have mainly the main campus, and then the image to the right of you is the grad house, or the grad student's home. Campaigning for funds. Edward used many ways to fund Snow Hill. For property funding, Edward worked the summer at a labor yard. He struck a deal to make his pay in meals and encouraged labor for building 2 more rooms. For educational institution funding, it provided to be difficult. Edward was adamant on the school being non-denominational. Snow Hill Institute served and continued to strive in welcoming all students, no matter their religious background. Edwards tried other methods to win the community support. In June of 1898, Booker T. Washington actually wrote to Edwards and invited him to accompany the Tuskegee Quarterlet North in hopes of discussing what Tuskegee had done for him, and was to show in turn what he was willing to do for his people. Dr. Washington reasoned in ways that Edward could have a chance to meet some of the best people in the country and therefore gain support for his work. Edward spoke about Snow Hill at churches and town meetings through the summer of 1898. He will meet abolitionists such as the Messenger siblings, who were deeply interested in the welfare of African American educational pursuits. The brother and sister duo introduced Edward to other individuals who supported Snow Hill through monetary donations and words of motivation. During other events in 1906, during the 1906 marking of the 25th anniversary of Tuskegee Institution, Mr. Carnegie, Andrew Carnegie, was in attendance, and he actually donated $10,000 to Snow Hill to further African American pursuits for the county. And these, of course, is a few of the grads, just to show you the images of some of the grad students who graduated from Snow Hill Institute. Snow Hill Normal and Industrial Institute. The school operated as a private school for African American children until Dr. Edwards retired in 1924, when it became a public school operated by the state of Alabama. The school officially closed in 1973 after desegregation in the Wilcox County school system. The National Snow Hill Alumni Association and the local Snow Hill Institute supporters determined to save the remaining structures in 1980. In June of 1980, Dr. Edwards' granddaughter, Anna Snow Hill alumni, Miss Moorhead, reopened the school as a Spring Tree and Snow Hill Institute for the Performing Arts and ran an after-school program as well as a summer program for the local students. The Art Institute continued to run into 2003, when Miss Moorhead's declining health caused her to close down the school permanently. The school was Snow Hill Institute was listed on the National Registration of Historical Places on February 24th, 1995. Out of the original 27 buildings, only 8 of them still survive. And these are just a few of the images of the remaining general structures of the Snow Hill Institute. Of course, I wanted to include some of the site sources that I used for this presentation.
All right. Catiana, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, just say.
I was going to ask
Okay.
if there were any questions about the presentation.
Okay. Hey, do we have an echo now? We do have an echo. Does anyone have any questions for Catiana? Catiana, I do have a question for you at the risk of tremendous echo. I wanted to ask about, I see that you're in the archives.
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about the work that you're doing there and how that's informing your research, and if someone's interested in researching Little Tuskegees, kind of the importance of the archives and what you guys have to offer over there?
So again, I am the grad fellow for Tuskegee University, and my job consists of digitizing the reels that we have, the documents, any of the artifacts that we currently have on file, as well as anything that's being brought into the archives. Currently, we are working with the Smithsonian Institute to create a HBCU universal database. So you will have access to all of the different artifacts that not just Tuskegee, but also FAMU, Clark Atlanta, Spelman may have within their files. So essentially, we want to create this mainly to provide accessibility to the general public, as well as bring awareness that HBCUs are important, and they also house these many documents that people generally do not know about.
Any other questions for?
And I like to also add, just with Snow Hill, it does plays a major part because a lot of the former institutions are not being recognized enough. So this helps out with this project.
We had a question. What is the name of the database?
The HCAC. So it is, well, we necessarily don't have a name right now. We're just calling it HCAC until we exactly get it all together, because it's always changing. It won't be, the official database won't be put out, I believe, until 2026.
All right. Oh, yep, we have a question. Yes. All right, we have a question. What inspired you to get into learning the history of Snow Hill?
So my educational background, I graduated from Albany State, which is a small HBCU. Usually the big names that you hear about will be FAMU, Clark Atlanta, even Tuskegee. So coming from a smaller HBCU, I felt as though it needs to be recognized because we are on the verge of essentially dying out because we don't have the capacity to get our information out there to the general public. So I wanted to talk about Snow Hill because, again, it is close to, it's still in, it's close to Georgia, so it is close to home. And I understand the struggle it is to find funding to maintain a school and also to get different stigmas out about educational pursuits, especially within the African American community.
All right, Catiana, thank you very much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.